Welcome back to another episode of the Mental Toughness and Body Show. Today I am joined by Katja Pischel, Germany's top personal branding expert for women in tech and the founder of Bridge Builder for Change. After a successful career at Microsoft, Katja left the corporate world to help senior female leaders create businesses and lives on their own terms, which is super cool. She's worked with hundreds of executives, authored a best-selling book, and continues to inspire leaders globally. Katja, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Rob. I'm really excited to be here.
So what I love is moments that happen in life. So I'm really interested in what do you remember the exact moment when you said, "Do you know what? I'm done with Microsoft. I'm out and I'm going to go and do this."
That's a great question. Well, I want to say it was probably more of a process, but I do remember a specific point in time, and that was in the spring of 2017. And 1 year prior, my husband has been diagnosed with severe depression, and that honestly changed my whole life, our whole life. And after a year, I remember a specific moment where it sort of made click, and I understood that this won't be over anytime soon, unfortunately, and that I
Mm.
really have a choice. And that choice is, I can have that his illness dictate my and our life, or I don't.
Yeah.
And I chose the later. And that was really, the point where I said, okay, I'm gonna, I'm gonna go down that path. And a few months later, I decided to hand in my resignation in the summer of 2018.
Did you ever
Yeah.
see yourself as a business owner when you're on, there's like this side, which is what you're doing now, and then I like to say there's that side where you're thinking about it for ages, and then there's all this pain to get to where you are now. But did you ever see yourself as a business owner?
Oh yes, my very first professional experience while I was still going to university was I was working for an e-commerce startup that friends of mine had started, and that really, shaped me in a very profound way because that very first work experience that I've been through was an environment where there weren't any structures, there weren't any, departments, just a bunch of young, super ambitious people who wanted to change the world.
Yes.
And ever since a part of me knew I want to have my own business one day.
Yeah, nice, nice. I know when I made the move, I used to be a chartered accountant. I did that for 19 years. And
Mhm.
before I
Mhm.
changed to do what I do now, and I never, ever saw myself as being a business owner. But then
Mhm.
mine was in 2007. I said, nah, this is what I'm supposed to do. So there you go.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
so, in the introduction, I mentioned about how you moved away to work with women. Do you work with men and women in what you do, or is your passion is mainly women?
I always say I always refer to myself as a veteran of the tech industry because I've spent over 20 years there. And for that first half of my career, I mostly worked with men, just, because it's a very male-dominated
Yes,
industry.
yes.
I think even except for one, all my bosses were men. And then I took a very conscious decision that the second half of my career is dedicated to women. So I
Right.
like 99% I work with women, and sometimes, if a man gets, if men get excited about what I'm going to do and offer, then obviously I work with them as well, but I market exclusively to women.
And is there a particular reason for, apart from what you just said, but is there an underlying reason that, you know what, I just feel that you want to help women more succeed in corporate and well, whether it's corporate or you help them to run their own businesses or see their full potential? Is it that?
I've always been a strong believer that it's super beneficial for both men and women when women are financially independent.
Yeah.
So that is really something that drives me. And what I've seen, I used to run a non-for-profit in Nepal for 10 years where we were supporting women and their children. What we saw there, and it's something I can, I've seen in the workplace, is that if you support women, they give back big time. They reinvest the money in their family, in the communities. And I see that with women business owners all the time.
I'm it I work with mainly women myself, but
Mhm.
I work with kids and men too. But it just so happens that it's about 66% of my clients are female,
Mhm.
and I'm very passionate about making sure that they do everything that they can to live their best, like their best selves. And
Yeah.
men make me really angry. I'm one of them, but they make me really angry when I hear that there, I don't know what it's like in Germany where you are, but here in Melbourne, Australia, still it's like we're in the 1950s to some extent, and there are some men that just naturally expect, obviously for biological reasons, women have to have the children, but then there seems to be this expectation that they can still continue to go on and progress their career. The woman
Mhm.
either has to stop or not even have a career, like ever or whatever is
Mhm.
dictated,
Mhm.
but in the best interest of the children. And then they get to a point where maybe the kids are older. They can't, I'm generalizing here, but they kind of realize that they hate their partner and now they're not financially independent and they've got
Yeah.
this anchor around their neck holding them where they are.
Yes.
Now we're sitting in 2025, and I don't know that we've progressed a lot, even though we have a bit since 1950. I mean, we're like 75 years in, and I don't know, is it similar to that in Germany, or is this just a global issue?
I was going to say it feels like a global issue, and especially right now, it feels like we kind of, I don't know, it feels like we lost 30 years of progression with everything that's happening on a global level. But isn't that
Yes,
the reason, why there's that saying, and I think it's just so true, choose your partner wisely, like your life
yes,
partner.
yes,
Because it's obviously there are so many great men out there who support their families, who support their wives, and who, by the way, I feel suffer equally as women do from the existing system and structures.
yes, yeah. With the, what would you say is your, I suppose, the biggest challenge when it comes to whether it's men or women, but in getting people to say, is it a self-belief? I mean, you said that you help them like create their stories and so forth, but um, is the biggest thing holding people back their limiting beliefs, their fears that they're not good enough, imposter
Mhm.
syndrome, that kind of stuff? What are the biggest challenges that you see?
Especially for women becoming visible, and when you start building your personal brand, when you start telling your story, that equals becoming visible. And for women, becoming visible still doesn't feel safe. It feels dangerous. And it's true, like historically, when women became outspoken and stood up for themselves, terrible things happened to
They
them.
had
I
their
think
head
this
cut off, heads cut off,
exactly, they had their head cut
horrible
off.
things. Yeah.
So, and there's still a lot of fear in that system. Imposter is another reason. I like the women, like extremely successful women in the corporate world, again, like major executives jobs, they still sometimes have the feeling they don't have something important to share. There's a massive fear of rejection. So what is it if what happens if I put myself out there and nobody wants to hear what I have to say? So there's a lot of limiting beliefs for sure.
So if we were going to give people a couple of tips as to how to overcome those, what's a good strategy?
But for me, and this really is my whole understanding of personal branding, is it has nothing to do with playing a role or with telling people you are something that you are not. It's quite the opposite, actually. For me, it's finding and distilling the essence of who you truly are. What are the values you live your life by? What is it that makes you unique and special? And once you have that clarity, what I see happening again and again, that gives you such a massive confidence boost that then in the next step, once you have the clarity, it's so much easier to position yourself also like in the outside world, be it on social media or speaking from stage or, you know, speaking up in a meeting. There are so many ways to become visible, but getting that clarity and that understanding first is essential.
I know that that may have just sounded like a bunch of words to people, but I really get it because it's that authenticity. There is so much
Yeah.
inauthenticity in the world these
Oh,
days. And I know when again, when I first started business and social media, like back in 2009, like Facebook, I was barely doing anything on Facebook. There was no
mhm,
Instagram. It was like,
mhm.
then I'm looking at, oh, look what that person's doing over there. Oh, I should do that. And then it's like, oh, this person's getting a lot of attention over here. Oh, I should do that. And oh, I should do this.
Mhm.
And I was finding that I was wasting a lot of time trying to be someone other than myself. And to some extent, I think it's probably taken me probably 14 or 15 years to get to that place where, as you just said, really understanding what your values and beliefs are. And I think for me, that's only become instilled through being burnt a lot, being let down a lot, and stuff.
Mhm.
And you say, do you know what? Yeah, I don't deal with that toxic energy. I don't, that's not for me. And you become more, as you say, confident because now I'm happy and proud of the values and beliefs. I am different. I'm authentically different, but it makes it much easier for me to tell my story as well because I'm not making it up.
Yeah, I think this is so true because if you're trying to make something up, it's just a massive waste of energy.
Yeah.
And it's not sustainable. I mean, you know, you can do that for a few months, maybe a few years, but then you're burned out. And you know, where's the point? I
Yeah.
feel we've come to a point also in history where, and you mentioned it, you know, there's so much fake out there. And
Mm.
people, that's at least what I observe, people are sick of those perfectly curated Instagram facades. They're
Yes. Yeah.
because we all long to truly connect to other people. It's our human nature.
Yes, that's
People
right.
follow people, like real
Yeah.
people, in real life as well as on social media.
That's
And then
right.
when you think about it, people buy from people,
Yeah.
regardless if you have a business or if you are in corporate. We want to connect through authentic stories. That's what we really
Yes.
want.
Yeah, I refuse to put a filter over any of my photos or videos and
Me
stuff.
too. That's what I look like, right?
Even on Zoom, like I did a recording earlier, and there's a setting on Zoom where you can take it all the way to the end to make you kind of look like I don't know, a
Yes,
porcelain doll or something. But I refuse
yes,
to do that because
I
it's not
like it.
real.
Yes.
That's not real. So you've
Mm.
worked with a lot of leaders, I guess, at the top of their game. What would you say you see as their biggest weaknesses? Because often they probably can't see because nobody's maybe even had the courage to say to them, do you know what? You're being inauthentic or whatever. What do you see?
So what I see that at a certain point in their careers, and that is usually, you know, once they have checked all sort of external markers of success, you know, they have that big job, they have the big salary, they have the title, they have whatever comes with it. But at a certain point, they really start asking themselves, is that all there is? And then they recognize that they might have been, and this is not about, you know, right or wrong. I mean, this is my personal story as well, because I've been at that point. But then they realize that they might have gone for the wrong success metrics. And you know that what they have heard about success all their life might only be partially true to them, and there might be other things that are more important. And I see more, especially more and more women. I mean, that's a major driver where women, after a successful corporate career, actually find the courage to start their own business because they really want to do something purposeful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So it's
So,
a, it's sorry, you go first.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I was going to say, is there a common? It's just about the money. They want to get to these positions. It's the money, the lifestyle, but perhaps what I'm hearing is what's really missing is that they're not really thinking about the impact.
Yes. Yes. That's 100% true. And what I have seen, the higher you climb the ladder, usually the more detached you actually are from like real impact. You
Yeah,
might have millions in budgets, but it's just very,
they're just
um,
numbers and commas.
it's just exactly, it's just numbers. Yeah.
I remember attending a wedding of a client of mine, and it was one of those. I'm single, so it was one of those things I wasn't allowed to bring a plus one or anything like that. So the
Mhm.
only person I knew at the wedding was the bride, and so the bride's always the last to come, right? So I remember talking to the father of the bride, and so Telstra here is a perhaps I shouldn't have mentioned the name, but anyway, Telstra, it's the biggest telecommunications company here. Now, he's retired now, but he's very, very senior. So you can imagine a big, big salary. And I can remember talking to him because he was mirroring back to me the value that I add to um, his future daughter-in-law, the
Mhm.
value that I add to your life. He said, she just values you so much. You've changed her life in so many different ways and everything. And some of this stuff is the first time I'm hearing it. Like it was really, really unusual. But anyway, I got to talk to him about his job. And I said, I just love what I do. I said, I never work a day in my life. I said, what about you? Do you love your job? And he's like, no, I
Mhm.
really don't like it. But
Yeah.
the problem for him was he'd like reached this lifestyle where there was just no way he'd go back. Now, he then went on like in next 12 months, I think he actually retired and now
Mhm.
he's doing a bunch of other things, like financially secure. But it just really struck me that, wow, here's this person that is so senior in one of Australia's biggest companies and he hates his job.
Well, I'm not surprised. I hear that again and again.
Mm.
I'm not surprised.
But what you just said there before, I think this is why I love why, like without you guys, without women, we're screwed. Like we can't run everything. You take care of the kids, you mold the kids. Like we've got no idea. We just give them devices, and so I don't do that. But I'm just generalizing here. But I love how women are so more emotionally in touch with themselves and what the world needs and so forth. And I think that's what you were saying before there, why so many women they get to that point in corporate and they leave to probably to have start their own businesses and have a greater impact.
Yes,
Whereas the stupid
exactly.
men are still hating their jobs, staying where they are, and just
Well, given the current system, I think we need both.
yeah,
Yeah, we definitely need both.
yeah. So tell me, with obviously it's tough running a business, and well, only say what you are comfortable saying, but I'm only mentioning it because you mentioned it before about your husband and so forth. But what sacrifices have you had to make to make it where you are in business to give people a bit of an idea of because look, let's face it, you could turn up to your old Microsoft job and if you didn't feel like doing anything today, you'd still get paid exactly the same amount. You do that in your business and you just don't get paid. So it requires sacrifice. But I always love talking to other successful business owners and seeing their perspective on it.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And as I have written, as you said in the intro, as I have written a book about my whole life, there's nothing to hide. I'm just thinking what would be really useful here. The thing is, to me, it never really felt like a sacrifice because I always had my eyes on what I gained instead. Um,
Mm,
I mean, if I was to name one thing that I had to sacrifice, I'd say it was my ego. Like seriously, because it was my husband who was very ill for numerous years. I've been through many, many like severe health crises in the last 10 years. And, saying goodbye to that version of you that you thought you were becoming, um, that probably was a sacrifice, because some things just, and again, I think this is normal, just some things just didn't work out the way I thought they were. Uh, but
so
then,
do you think you had to say, like in your mind, do you think you had to sacrifice a greater version of you, which was going to be doing something else? Is that what you're meaning?
I wouldn't say a greater version, but when you think about successful entrepreneurs, you usually wouldn't probably think about somebody who is fighting chronic illness, or you wouldn't think about somebody who is,
Absolutely.
living with a partner who has like a mental
Struggles.
illness for many
Mm,
years.
mm.
But then the funny thing is, and I really think it's funny, once you start talking about these things, you see that these things are everywhere.
Yep.
Everywhere. It's not an exception of life, it's life, I always say.
Yes.
And it opens also so many doors because it helps me connect with people on a totally different level. Every entrepreneur talks about resilience, and that's fair. But when I look at my own life, I know I have a few chapters that many people luckily didn't have to go through, but they made me stronger. They made me even more, they helped me to become even more clear about what it is that's important to me, and to like really radically change my life again and again.
Yeah.
And today you know, I think the happiest person I've been in my whole life.
Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful, isn't it? I can
Yeah.
relate to everything that you're saying here. Would you say, so I think this is important, well, assuming that you agree with me, but that it's not so powerful in my question I'm about to ask. But I like to bring this up often because I think people that, like I was saying before, they're sitting on this side of the change,
Yes.
and then this part's changed, and then that's the changed version.
Mhm.
My perspective is that change is obviously very hard, but I know that every super, super painful moment that I've had in my life, on the other side of that pain, from having to step into it, on the other side of it, every single time, there has been astronomical growth because of going through it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And you know what? I wouldn't even say, well, I always phrase it a little different for myself. I don't say change is hard. What is hard is me not accepting reality. This is where all the pain is coming from, you
Mm,
know? And over the years, I just became, like, honestly, I became a master of what I call radical acceptance. I don't spend any energy on things I cannot change. And to be honest, most things in life we don't have any control over,
yeah.
like zero. We don't.
So one of the things that I do around that is that, yeah, accept the same thing, but
Mhm.
come up with a greater meaning for things,
Yes.
enabling me to be able to then, like, for instance, my daughter passed away at age
Mhm.
15, and it's like I
Mhm.
could be immobilized for the rest of my life because
Right.
of that, because why would you take my daughter away,
Mhm. Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I have to find a greater reason for why that happened, and that she's at peace and she's no longer suffering, and all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff, and know that she sits on this shoulder right here with me all the time.
Mhm.
And that enables me to use that to make sure that I become a better person. And one of the things that I use for myself is that if I feel like I'm not doing enough, like I hear a voice saying, "Dad, I'm disgusted at you. You need to work harder, or you need to do this, or you need to do that." And I think about it as, well, when we catch up again, we'll have a lot to talk about. Um,
Yeah,
but that, I
yeah.
mean, that might sound maybe silly and simple, but it's just an example of how you can use something as power to keep you living your life, because there's no one that leaves your life that would want to say, now, Katja, when I go, I want you to suffer. I want you to be miserable. I don't want you to ever achieve anything. Like, people want the
Mhm.
opposite, but we can really beat ourselves up over that. Mind you, it's not an easy process, and I still obviously haven't.
No,
Mm.
no, it's not. But I think it sounds like you have mastered such an important, skill, transforming like sadness and anger and whatever
Mm.
comes with, such a tragedy that you have experienced. But it sounds like that you were really able to transform that energy into a massive growth opportunity for yourself.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of challenge that we go through, you don't know what it's going to look like,
No.
and you don't know what it's going to hurt like along the way, and you don't know what opportunities there are going to be. But just like we were saying just before, it's really helped me understand who I am as a dad, as a man, being authentic, having more clarity. And I'll go to what you said before, with the exception of the obvious that my little girl's not here anymore. But I have never had more clarity or happiness in my entire
Mm.
life about where I'm going, what my purpose is, and my daughter's legacy is a
Mhm.
part of that.
Mhm.
But that's only come through going through so much pain and refusing to lay down and not live my best self.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've just got a couple more questions for you. We could talk for hours, but I
Mm.
like this one uh, to ask people, if you could master any skill instantly, like just like that, what's something that you would really love to be able to do?
It's a great one. Painting. Like
Painting. Okay.
painting. Yes. Yes. Because that's something, and my husband, he's very much into arts. And it's just something, I mean, I'm a very creative person, but in a different way. And it's just always something that I admired because at least this is what I imagine it to be like. It helps you to enter a totally different world. And that's just something I'd be super curious about.
That is true. Is that a painting behind you, or is that a photo?
No, it's a photo.
Right. You could have
Yes.
said, yeah, it's one of mine. But you were being authentic, so I appreciate that. So say when all is all is done, how do you think you would like to be remembered? What would you like your legacy to be?
She she gave hope and inspiration to women around the world. That's what
Who-
I would like to be remembered.
Okay. Yeah, lovely.
Mm.
Lovely. What do you think your superpower is? We were talking about superpowers earlier. What do you think yours is?
My superpower is bringing clarity to chaos. That's my
Mm,
superpower.
yeah, nice. What do you think your kryptonite is?
What does kryptonite mean?
Don't you? Oh, right, Superman. You know Superman, and his
Yeah.
kryptonite is what makes him weaker. So I suppose, what's your weakness? Do you think that you
Ah,
would really
yeah.
like
Okay.
to improve
Yes.
apart from
Yeah.
painting, because you want to
Yeah.
master painting?
Um, my empathy, if I don't watch out for it. Yes.
Uh, I was about to say, while you think, I'll tell you what mine is, and yeah, I am. I have a very, very big heart, and that means that people can take advantage of it. I'm very caring, very loving, and that's why
Yeah,
I have so many people come to me. And I obviously have clients that come to me to do that, but I have people that just lean on me for that too. And one thing that I'm learning to master is that emotional detachment from things so that
right.
you don't just become all your energy going to other people. And it's not about not caring, it's just about knowing, okay, there's a line here, and I'll love
Mm,
you up to this point, but we don't go past that because that's then me carrying your stuff. And um, they've got to carry their own stuff, right? So that they get the growth,
yes.
so that you don't get the growth.
Yeah, and I think it's, there's nothing wrong with caring about other people. It's just I think it's about finding the right balance
Mm.
and caring about yourself first. Because only when you care about yourself first, you can, you can give, you can provide, you can support other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, you've added so much value here. I think people need to go back and re-listen to this episode and stop and take some notes because it's been so powerful. But you've also got a free resource where people can really dig deep into their own story and stuff. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about how people can get in touch? I'll put the links below, but also tell us a little bit about your free resource.
Yes. So the best way really to get in touch with myself is through LinkedIn. That's the main platform I use. And then what I have, because it really, having an answer to the question really changed my life. And the question is, what's your story? And I fundamentally believe that every leader, every founder, business owner out there needs to have an answer to that question.
Mhm.
And I also believe that every story is worth telling, right? Because the values we hold, the convictions we have, the experiences we have made in our lives, they just shape us and they make us unique. And just like a signature dish in your favorite restaurant, everybody has what I call a signature story. And I developed a free tool that helps you develop yours in just 30 minutes, like a first prototype of it. And
Yeah, wow.
I love that to be in the hand of every leader and founder.
Yeah, nice. So, have we got a separate link for that? Or is that just an?
Yes,
Yeah, right. Okay.
yes.
So I'll put that in there as well. So a link to your website, a link to that tool, and just the links to how people can get in touch with you on LinkedIn. This has been fabulous. So I just have one more question, which I'm going to let you close the show with. I know I've been holding you in suspense, as I said. Um, I'm hopefully not going to ask you anything you can't answer, but some people get stumped by this. But you won't. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Don't be so hard on yourself. And instead treat yourself with the same compassion, grace, and gentleness you would your best friend. That's the best piece of advice.
Yeah, lovely. I see you didn't
Mm.
struggle with that at all.
No.
To make it harder. All right. Well, thank you so much for today, Cardi. It's been a pleasure. I love technology. We can be speaking from opposite ends of the planet. It's really lovely to meet you here. And thank you so much for all the work that you're doing and sharing all those great tips with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you.